but also those who call my office and say, why don't you have service to my town or down my street? And those who come looking to me for jobs. We talk a lot about jobs in this economy, and construction projects seem to always be pegged as the way to create jobs. Well, I can tell all of you that construction projects are a good way to create jobs, but they're not a good way to create long-term, stable jobs. Investing in operations and maintenance of operations is a good way to create sustainable jobs. All of those construction people who struggle to make it financially past Christmas every year get sick of it after a few years and they walk through my door asking for a job, because we pay jobs year-round, we keep people employed, and not just the jobs that we have created at Coast, but the jobs that we bring people to. And that's part of the reason why I'm so excited and so passionate about being able to reestablish service to the shipyard and the trade port and to downtown Portsmouth on a commuter basis, where right now people have no option other than their car because their employer expects them to be at work at a time that we do not have the funding to get the bus there at the moment. So I hope that everybody considers that and the importance that CMAQ funds, TE funds, and all the other programs we talk about, the ability to flex funds into the 5310 program, those all keep our economy going. And when everybody is very concerned about that, I understand how difficult it is to talk about taxes and revenues, but it has to be done. If the state, our legislatures, and the NHDOT can invest the time to hold 27 hearings in which we explain why we can't fund something, I think that's proof that we have the time to explain how we could fund something and educate our public about how the process works and what our options are. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak tonight? Yes, sir.
I'll take it, Dana, because I got Tom with me on our drag competition.
That's great.
First, thank you for this opportunity to provide input on the 10-year plan. I'm Dave Sharples. I'm city planner / interim director of development services / resident of Somersworth. And with me I have Tom Willis. He's our public works director. And I'm not here to talk about revenue streams in that chart. I will leave that to smarter people than I to address that challenge. That is quite the chart. It kind of says it all. It's half the funding. But I'm here to speak first on behalf of two Somersworth projects that are listed in the 10-year plan: the Route 9 bridge rehabilitation and the sidewalk and streetscape improvement project that's funded by the Competitive Transportation Enhancement, or TE, program. Briefly, the Route 9 bridge project is a bridge that's on a significant commuting corridor between Maine and New Hampshire. It's also our gateway to our historic downtown area. It's been degrading for many years. The deck, the pavement's literally falling into the river. And it was good to note that this is a collaborative project. It's funded by the City of Somersworth, Berwick, Maine, New Hampshire DOT, and Maine DOT. It's a collaborative project because it crosses the Salmon Falls River, and half the bridge is in Maine, half is in Somersworth. So we are pleased to announce we did note that it is in the biennial capital work plan of Maine DOT for fiscal years 2012-2013, and we do look forward to starting that project in the near future. Our TE project includes reconstruction and repair of our sidewalks, streetscape improvements, a pedestrian focal point, and other improvements in downtown Somersworth that we feel are a vital step in our economic development efforts to create a vibrant local economy in the city's urban core. And these are both preservation and maintenance projects. Thirdly, I just want to express our support for public transit, particularly Coast Bus. We have thousands of our residents in Somersworth that utilize Coast Bus, and any diminished fundings to Coast and public transit in general will have a negative impact on our citizens. A number of our citizens rely on using Coast Bus to get to employment centers elsewhere, and other people from around the region to get to businesses in Somersworth in our community. So we do, a number of our residents rely on that service. In regards to the larger picture, I believe infrastructure improvements really lie at the core of building and supporting successful economies, and the city supports adequate funding. So cities and towns across New Hampshire can leverage their scarce funds with federal and state funds to address these, aging infrastructure issues that are not just unique to New Hampshire, but everyone around the country. So just want to overall say, I think it's given the funding constraints, I think it's a good plan. I think DOT did a good job. I specifically want to mention, I appreciate their scrutiny wherever the directive came from. When we went through the TE application process, there was a question on the TE application that says, did someone who routinely prepares budget perform this budget? And I think I hadn't seen that before, and I appreciated that scrutiny. Now DOT is actually taking those budgets in-house, I believe, and scrutinizing them to minimize, the $4 million project that's budgeted 1.2, that everyone finds out it's triple the cost when it goes through. And actually they reviewed our budget and it ended up being, albeit small, but they talked about construction oversight. We were a little light in that, so it actually, so it can be more fiscally responsible and a realistic budget. So I applaud that effort, and we'd like to, see that endeavor definitely continue. And that is it. Thank you for support. Appreciate the support for our projects, public transit, and all the other sorely needed infrastructure projects across New Hampshire that are listed in the draft plan. Thank you. Want to add anything? Or are you good? Good. Okay.
Good. Thanks. I'd like to just point out one thing. I was reticent in introducing Nancy Mayville, who's our municipal engineer, works in the municipal highways engineer, works in the community assistance section of our planning bureau, and her group and her section is very instrumental in the TE programs and providing that structure and the discipline and looking at the estimates and stuff. So.
And your projects are both listed in the nearer future rather than the further future, which is both of them for 2013, which is actually bodes very well compared to a lot of other communities.
Yes,
that have
I
theirs
mean, we were
out.
just speaking to it. Yes,
right.
And we have actually the agreement. DOT sent us the agreement on the TE grant last week, and we're imminently moving forward with both projects.
Thanks. Does anybody else wish to speak tonight? Yes, sir.
As others, Councilor, thank you very much for coming to Rochester. It's great to have you here. I'm appearing before you tonight primarily wearing the hat as the Director of the Department of Planning and Development for the City of Rochester. But I wear other hats as well that inform my comments. I'm a member of the Stratford Regional Planning Commission, the Stratford Metropolitan Planning Organization. You've heard from them already, so I won't repeat what they've already said. I'm also a founding member of COAST. It was hard to believe last year. I noticed that half of my life I've been on the board of COAST for 30 years, and that's pretty amazing what we've been able to do in that time frame. I'm also a member of the Skyhaven Airport Advisory Committee that deals with issues at Skyhaven and representing Rochester's economic development interests. And I also wear a couple of other hats that are not directly transportation related, but certainly are connected, and that is I'm a board member of the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority, and clearly when we look at siting projects, the ability for people to move to and from those projects using alternative forms of transportation is important. And I'm also a board member of the Piscataqua region of the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, and again, that organization has been involved in lots of different efforts, some of which relate directly to transportation, but most of which relate more generally to quality of life sorts of issues. And clearly the ability to move around and get around in our community is important. The first thing I'd like to do, there's 6 things I'd like to talk about. The first thing is to offer thanks. And one of the major projects that is ongoing in Rochester are improvements to the Spalding Turnpike. It was probably about 10 years ago or so that the City of Rochester invited Governor and Council to actually have a meeting in our community. You met in our wonderful Opera House, and we talked a lot about Spalding Turnpike, but what happened after the meeting, what was really important, is folks actually went out and looked, and they saw the netting that was underneath the bridges to catch the concrete before it would fall and hit the cars driving underneath. And people got a real close look at some of the problems with the turnpike. And literally, it was in the next 10-year plan that those projects got accelerated. We've seen a lot of work happening, and we're very grateful for that. You've also been supportive of the Stratford Square project in the center part of the city, moving folks around, and we appreciate that. And there have been a number of SFP, CMAC, and TE projects, and we're grateful for those as well. The second thing I want to note is that Rochester has been a team player in the process over the last number of years. We've acknowledged the belt tightening that was necessary when the plan became financially constrained. We actually removed some projects from the 10-year plan. We have not added projects to the 10-year plan, and the only construction project in this plan in the city of Rochester is the construction project at Stratford Square. So when you look at the size of the community in this region and the fact that we only have one construction project, I really think says something that we've been attempting to work within the constraints. We're, again, grateful for all the work that's been going on in the Turnpike. The third thing I want to do is recognize and appreciate the priority that's given to maintenance and preservation. I think that's a really good thing. But I'd also like to suggest that we need to focus on improving the effectiveness and efficiency of what we have. And I think another good example that was mentioned earlier is some of the work that was done along Route 11. You have a certain amount of right-of-way available, and there were a lot of turning movements that needed to be accommodated in a safer way. And I think between the city working with state DOT came up with a way to make that roadway within the constraints that were there work more efficiently and effectively. And I think that's another important component that we need to focus on. The fourth thing I want, and so those three things are kind of looking back. The next three things I want to talk about looking forward, and that is that decreasing revenues and increasing needs is simply not a sustainable situation. Eliminating the motor vehicle registration fee without a simultaneous replacement revenue stream, I think, is a very short-sighted move on the part of the state. To me, it's like deciding to save money. It's like my deciding to save money on my vehicle cost by refusing to add oil to my engine when the oil goes down. Maybe I have an immediate savings of a few bucks, but the long-term costs to me are going to be huge, absolutely significant. And I think we need to be thinking much more in terms of life cycle costs rather than the immediate costs that we're paying today. I think also refusing to increase the gas tax. Now again, this is not a governor council decision, I recognize that. But in terms of us all working together, refusing to increase the gas tax over the years, again, is a decision that is good rhetoric. I mean, it sounds real good, but it leads to huge life cycle costs that we're going to be looking at in the future. The fifth point I'd like to make is that continuing to ignore this life cycle perspective is going to inevitably lead to some results. One is New Hampshire is going to be reduced in our economic development competitiveness with other communities. If our infrastructure is starting to fail because we're not willing to spend the money to maintain it, make it more efficient, more effective, because we're refusing to pay for it, then that becomes part of a negative cycle, and we will not compete effectively with others, not only in this country but internationally. And I think it's also going to affect our quality of life. We pride ourselves in terms of where we are here in New Hampshire. And it's going to affect our quality of life. It will affect our children's quality of life and our grandchildren's quality of life if we don't take care of these life cycle things and really focus on those kinds of things. And frankly, that's not, I've worked with the city of Rochester almost 25 years, that's not a legacy that I want to leave for future generations. And it was alluded to earlier that at an MPO meeting, we literally had to take a vote deciding between one safety improvement in one community and a safety improvement in another community. That's a little bit like Solomon having to split the baby. It's not a good choice, not a good position for us to be in. And what I want to close, the thought I want to close with is I think we can do better. I really do. I got to tell you, when I look out at this audience, and from what I read in the newspaper from last night, the number of people who are attending and who are involved and who are engaged. I attended this similar meeting 2 years ago in Somersworth, and there were 2 other people besides me testifying. I mean, to have this number of people here who are interested and engaged, I think already says that we're doing something right. We need to get more engaged, more people talking about it. I think we have to be more creative. I think we have to be collaborative. We have to sort of bring back the New England barn-raising ethic where we all work together on projects to get them done for the benefit of the entire community. And I also think we have to be realistic and honest. I saw a quote the other day that I thought is appropriate here, and that is, we're all entitled to our own opinions, but we're not all entitled to our own facts. And the fact is that you can't sustain our quality of life and our economic development competitiveness with decreasing funding and increasing needs as far